Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to our July town hall. And as you guys all know, I'm here with Leemon Baird and Mance Harmon. So thank you. Hello community. We hope everybody is staying safe and healthy and sane wherever you might be around the world. And again, we really appreciate everybody logging in from all over different time zones. It's so nice to connect with our community when we all have to be apart for a little bit. So we've had some great questions come in this time. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them because we have a lot, but we will try to make sure we address some important ones and then also have some fun ones to wrap up with and give you a little more insights into Mance and Leemon. But Mance, we are going to start at the top with a question that we've been hearing a lot. And some of the members of the community have been having issues with the wallet. So we'd love to just address that up front and, and share with them what's going on.
Yeah, so thank you all for the question. It was an expected question, an anticipated question. We have been collecting feedback. There is an update coming that should address the issues of the recent weeks. But I want to also say that in addition, we've partnered with a developer of one of the top wallets in the industry, in the crypto space. And they have agreed to make the transition from a Hedera wallet, our Hedera wallet, to their wallet seamless. That means that in the future, relatively near future, when their wallet rolls out with support for ours, you will be able to use your 24-word passphrase to add your Hedera account to their wallet, and you will be able to keep your same account number. I know that's important to a lot of people, understandably. And so we will continue to maintain the Hedera wallet until the community has been given a chance to migrate to a third-party wallet. So over time, we will maintain the wallet. There'll be plenty of time to migrate to another wallet. And we will provide a lot more details about this in the coming weeks.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Leemon, next one is for you. Some other ledgers are starting to talk about having millions of smart contract transactions per second. Will Hedera do this?
Oh, yeah. So sure, it just depends on how you're defining your terms. So a core central ledger has some limits on speeds, but then you can have side chains and side ledgers, and you can have shards within your ledger, and you can have app nets using the consensus service. And there's all these ways of having outsiders doing some of the work. And of course, if you do that, if you spread it over basically lots of different networks, then you can do millions or billions or trillions or quadrillions per second, however many networks you stand up. And so all of those things will happen. We will, of course, do that too, just like other people do it. So, they're saying, well, using layer 2 solutions or sharding or something else, we can get millions. That's true. Now, of course, it's only for certain transaction patterns. If every single transaction is touching the same account and you need to have the balance updating and being aware, everyone being aware of it instantly, then you start slowing down no matter how you try to spread it out. But as long as things are kind of spread out well, then you can split them across shards or across side ledgers or across independent ledgers that have inter-ledger communication or across app nets with HCS, and you can get as high of a speed as you want. So you always want to look at exactly what we're talking about when we say transactions per second. It means lots of different things.
All right. Thanks, Leemon. The next one, Simon Sinek says that successful companies have clearly identified what their why is. And I just want to add that the marketing team at Hedera loves Simon Sinek, and we fully subscribe to his start with the why. Hedera is great at answering the how behind their sophisticated technology. Leemon, if you want to take this one, what would you say is Hedera's why?
Yes. Why do we even exist? It is to produce the trust layer of the internet, a utility that will be here for 100 years, that allows people to, anytime you want to, carve out a piece of cyberspace for yourself. That was the original vision. This is enabling it to enable you to do decentralization, decentralized trust, to allow you to do disintermediation, to allow you to do privacy, to allow you to do all the things that you want to be doing for the whole world at high speed with the highest standards of security. But the bottom line why is that we want to be the trust layer of the internet for the planet, for the next century, and make it just possible for anyone to be involved. You don't have to be a major bank or a major company to do something. That anybody can do it anytime they want to, very cheaply, very fast, very easily. That is why we exist. And that is what we are all focused on from the very beginning. There were perhaps a number of projects whose goal was that next month we all get rich. That has never been what we have been trying to do. We've been trying to build something real that will be here for 100 years and make the entire world better. That is the goal.
Awesome. Okay, we always get some questions about the council. This time is no different. Mance, have there been any prospective council members that you sought out but then later turned down because the prospects' expectations were not maybe in line with what the council does?
Yeah, this is actually a pretty short answer. The answer simply is yes, there have been. I mean, we engage in lots and lots of conversations with potential council members all the time. And the potential members get eliminated for a wide variety of reasons. And so, you know, for every council member that we announce, it's probably, I'm shooting from the hip here, it's probably the case that we've spoken to 20 that are not being announced. So yeah, it happens all the time.
All right. And Leemon, AdStacks just announced that they recorded 1 billion events on the Hashgraph mainnet. And someone noted that the mirror nodes have only recorded around 200 million transactions since open access. Can you clarify?
Oh yeah. So an event is when somebody sees an ad on a website. You know, it's an impression where you go to a website, you see an ad, and the advertiser will need to pay for that impression. The website will need to be paid for that impression. And AdStacks in the middle is making all that happen. They do all the magic to make sure all those payments flow. That is an event. Then if you click on it, that's an event. These are what they mean by events. And what they do is they bundle up groups of events, and a group of events is a transaction. So you might take 10 events and turn it into one transaction. And the transaction would include a hash of that list of events so that you can prove in the future that's really what happened. And then the transactions are what go into Hedera. That's the number you just reported. Yeah, 200 million is pretty cool. In the last 10 months, we've had 200 million transactions. And those are completely independent things that flow through the network, and they reach consensus and they're operated on. And then if you really want to get confused, if you look at our actual underlying algorithm, we have all these math terms. One of our math terms is event, where you take a bunch of transactions and put them inside of an event. That is even more confusing because it has nothing to do with an AdStacks event. So you might take several AdStacks events and put them into a transaction, and then put several transactions into a Hedera event, and then those go through the consensus algorithm. So it's just good to keep track of it all. The important thing is that we're talking about lots of throughput on Hedera, 200 million in the last 10 months. And one customer is doing, or one user is doing an amazing amount of things in the advertising industry with 1 billion events that they have now recorded. So that's very impressive. And our hats are off to AdStacks for what they've achieved. It's amazing.
Thank you, Leemon, for clarifying that. All right, next one, Mance, for you. Let's continue on council. Can you provide some more context on Swisscom's departure from the council?
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, Swisscom Blockchain was the very first to sign the paperwork joining the Hedera Council. Even though they got announced with a group, I believe they were the very first one to actually sign on the dotted line, so to speak, to become a council member. They are a small, Swisscom Blockchain is a small subsidiary of Swisscom. And in recent months, the Swisscom Blockchain organization has undergone structural changes that resulted in their leaving the council. Had nothing to do with the relationship with the council or anything. It had everything to do with the structural changes taking place within their organization. I think also maybe it's worth noting that in our February council meeting, the council approved a set of criteria for membership that Swisscom Blockchain as an organization does not meet today. We certainly did not ask them to leave the council, but under the new guidelines, they would not qualify today as a new potential council member. I should say that Kamal Yousefi and the whole Swisscom Blockchain team contributed significantly to Hedera in its first phase of creating and growing the council. We're grateful for the role that they played in that earliest phase of the council. I have a great deal of respect for Kamal in particular, and for the rest of the team there at Swisscom Blockchain. And I would just say that for any other further questions, I would point you to Kamal's blog on the matter. I think it speaks for itself.
Thanks, Mance. And yeah, that blog is available on the Hedera site. Okay, Leemon, going back to the code. If the code becomes open review, will there be a bug bounty?
Oh yeah, I love bug bounties, and it'll happen at the very beginning. In fact, we've already done a bug bounty system. In December, we had a bug bounty program for using our networks, and we gave out bounties for people who found bugs, and I love that. And then when we release the services as open source, we will have a bug bounty program that starts the same day. It'll start right away. And when we release the platform as open review, we will have a bug bounty program starting the same day. And when I say bug bounty, I mean we're doing it the right way. I've actually heard of bug bounty programs that say, if you find a bug, tell us and we'll give you a prize, but you're never allowed to tell anyone for the rest of your life. That's crazy. Who would ever do that? If I find a bug in something, I'm not going to send it in for just a few dollars. I'm going to tell the world. I want to brag about it. No, we're not going to do that. We'll do it the right way. If you find a bug, you get the prize. You do need to give us a little bit of time to fix it. And then you can tell the world. And not only can you tell the world and brag about it, we will tell the world and back you up and say, yes, this really is the person who found the bug. And so you can brag about it and we'll say you're telling the truth and announce that. And if you want to be anonymous, we'll do that. But a lot of people want to brag, hey, I found a bug. And we will back you up and say that you found the bug. So you just give us a little bit of period to fix it first, but you don't want to hurt people who could be damaged by it. But we definitely are doing this, and so we will be doing bug bounty programs. They will start right at the beginning on the first day, and we're going to do it right, where you get credit for your hard work in addition to a prize. That's what we'll be doing.
That's great to hear, Leemon. Thank you. All right, Mance, I'm going to lob the next one over to you. What regulators besides the SEC, who I know we've talked about previously, has Hedera had regular contact with?
Yeah. So we have both direct and indirect contact with a wide range of regulators and policymakers, lawmakers at both the federal and state level. We speak directly to the regulators at the federal level. Of course, we've talked about the SEC. We've mentioned CFTC and Treasury. And we speak indirectly to these and more through our participation in organizations like the Digital Chamber of Commerce, run by Perry-Ann Boring, and at the federal level, and the Texas Blockchain Council, run by Lee Bratcher at the state level. And through these meetings and associations, we have the opportunity to provide feedback and input to frameworks that are being proposed at both federal and state level. And we've seen our input and contributions reflected in the policy proposals that are coming out of the regulatory agencies. And we also see our contributions shaping the proposed legislation from the lawmakers. So we have an impact, and of course that's the goal. So SEC, of course, is the most, and the others I've mentioned are less than the SEC.
All right. Next one, we have another council question, but I think I'll lob this one over to Leemon. Why 39 council members? Is there math and also symbolic reasons for picking 39?
Oh yeah, both, and a degree of being arbitrary. So if you have great control of the internet, you can do bad attacks on any ledger if they have a third of the members collaborating to do something evil. Now, of course, we mitigate that by having big companies that care about their reputations. They're not going to do something evil if they're going to get caught, and they will get caught because of the way transparency works. But even so, we wanted to make it really hard, a very high bar, like more than 12 of you, more than a dozen companies have to collaborate in order to do anything evil, which would imply, well, you need more than 36 members. if you want more than 12. And so what we said then is, okay, we'll just pick a nice round number, around 40 people will be our council. And then we realized, well, you know, it's kind of convenient when a council gets together and votes if you don't have ties. So an odd number would really be nice. So maybe in this nice round 40, we won't do that. We'll do like 39 or we'll do 41, something like that. So we thought it might be nice to be odd. You don't have to, you can always have tie-breaking rules, but it's just simpler to have an odd number. And then we said, okay, so 39, 41, which one should it be? And you know, we're sensitive to various cultures where the digit 4 is not a good thing. 3 is better. And so we said, fine, we won't have a 4 in the number. We'll make it 39 rather than 41. So it's a combination of all those things. There's some math, there's some arbitrary just ballparking, there's some slight conveniences of logistics of being odd, and then there's cultural sensitivity. Let's go for 39. And so that's where we ended up with 39. That's where we'll end up in the end.
All right. Thanks for that explanation, Leemon. Mance, why did the token distribution schedule change so only 34% of tokens will be released by the end of 2025?
Yeah, so if you only look at the schedule by itself, then that's what's implied. But if you read the entire report, then everything I'm going to share with you here is included in that report. I would encourage you to go take a look. But the chart is only what's contractually obligated as of the day of publishing that chart publicly and as of today. It's not necessarily the case that there will be no more than 34% by the end of 2025. What we've moved from is sort of a 15-year inflexible schedule to a schedule that provides flexibility and enables us to make grants that will promote the use of the network. In other words, if we see opportunities to use the token treasury to drive usage and adoption of the network, then we have the flexibility to use the treasury in that way. If we do that, then we'll update the token release schedule appropriately with plenty of time for people to react, and understand what the new picture is. But yeah, that's what the purpose of that schedule is to represent the contractual obligations at a moment in time.
All right, understood. Thanks for clarifying, Mance. Okay, Leemon, on to a question related to the original Hashgraph paper and the liveness quality of the ABFT implementation. I'm going to try to keep up here. If transactions are sent to a single malicious node and that node then gossips out contradictory transactions, could that lead to gridlock in the consensus process if other nodes refuse to accept contradictory transactions? If not, why not? And how does gossip about gossip prevent this?
Oh, great question. No, that's not how it works. I'll explain how it works. But good. I'm really happy people are thinking about these things. And asking questions about how could you attack it is 90% of what you do when you're building something. You spend 10% on how do I build it and 90% on, ooh, what attacks could there be? So I love the way you're thinking. But that's not actually how it works. So let me tell you how it works. The way it works is that if you were to create two transactions that shouldn't both happen, they're mutually exclusive. I think that's what contradictory means here. For example, a double spend. I only have one HBAR in my account, and I try to make a transaction that will send one HBAR to Alice, but I also make one that will send one HBAR to Bob. And maybe I go spend it in their stores. I'm trying to get something from Alice by spending an HBAR in her store. I'm trying to get something from Bob by sending an HBAR in his store. And if I get away with it, I'll have bought 2 things worth an HBAR, but only spent 1 HBAR. Double spends would be great for me and disastrous to the whole universe. So that's not what happens. What happens is I create these 2 transactions. One of them says give an HBAR to Alice, one says give an HBAR to Bob. I submit them to the network, to the same node or to different nodes, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's an honest node, maybe it's a malicious node, it doesn't matter. Either way, they both go out to the whole network. The whole network gets consensus. They talk back and forth, they do gossip about gossip, they do virtual voting, and they end up on a consensus on an ordering of all our transactions. So both of these are in the order. Both of these 2 mutually exclusive transactions are in the consensus order. They've all agreed. Maybe they all agree that Alice came before Bob, But whatever they agreed on, they all agreed on it. They all agreed that Bob was first or Alice was first, whichever way. So suppose Alice came before Bob. Then once everybody has consensus, then every computer all by itself, without talking to anyone, walks through all those transactions and makes them have the appropriate effect on the state. So when they get to Alice's, they say, I see, Leemon wants to give one HBAR to Alice. Fine. We'll make Leemon's balance go down by 1. We'll make Alice's balance go up by 1. The total number of HBARs in the universe is conserved. It's constant. And Leemon just gave a coin to Alice. Great. Then everybody, because we're all in the same order, will eventually get to Bob's. Everybody gets to Bob's later than Alice's because we all agreed. And then Bob's transaction, they say, oh, Leemon's trying to send an HBAR to Bob, but Leemon doesn't have any HBARs in his account. That account has 0 HBARs. This doesn't happen. And so then they all agree to do no change at all on the state. Nobody will change their local state. Bob does not get any more HBARs. And for that matter, I don't lose any because you can't have negative HBARs. So everybody changes the state the same way, and the state is good. No gridlock, no double spins, it's all good. You could say, well, what about a malicious node? What if he just gave Bob the coin anyway? He gave a coin to Alice and a coin to Bob, or maybe 1 million coins to Bob. What if he makes a bad state? He can't get away with that either. Because about once a second, every single node digitally signs the state. The whole state, all these balances of Alice and Bob and everything are in a gigantic Merkle tree. And every second, everybody digitally signs the hash at the root of the Merkle tree. It guarantees that every single bit in that tree is correct. So everybody is signing exactly the same hash, saying, among other things, this is Alice's balance, this is Bob's balance. And all of the honest nodes will agree. They will all be digitally signing the exact same state, saying that yes, Alice got 1 more coin, but Bob did not. If a malicious node says, I don't care, I'm going to give a coin to Bob anyway, then that one node will have a different state. The hash of that state at the root of the Merkle tree will be different. He can digitally sign it, and he can send it out to everybody else, and everybody else will look at it and say, that signature's not good. That is not a valid signature on the state I know about. I'm going to ignore it. And so all the honest nodes completely ignore that signature. And so if more than 2/3 of the nodes are honest, and a mirror node collects signatures from more than 2/3 of the nodes, then the mirror node knows for sure this is true. And so a malicious node cannot lie about the state. So there's no gridlock, there's no breaking consensus, and there's no double spins. And you can know for sure that you're getting the right answer. That is how it actually works.
All right, very cool, Leemon. Thank you. While you are on a roll, Leemon, what happens in the unlikely event that an account is created with a private key that has already been used?
Okay, so first of all, we do that all the time. You're allowed to use your private key, actually the public key that goes with it, but your key pair, you're allowed to use it to create lots of accounts and have them all share the same keys. And in fact, we do that in some cases, like all the council accounts have council keys on them. You know, that's the idea, is that there'll be lots of cases where you want multiple accounts that all use the same key. You can do that if you want. If you don't want to, you can make different keys for every account. You're free to do that too. You have the freedom, assuming your wallet software supports it. But if it doesn't, you can use the SDK to do it. And I'm sure there'll be wallet software soon that allows you to do whatever you want. Possibly though, you're asking, what if this accidentally happened? Like one person created a private key totally randomly, and then key pair, and then somebody else created a random key randomly, and they were randomly the same key. Yeah, okay. We can have all the computers in the world creating keys as fast as they can, and the sun will burn out before that happens. It's just cryptographically unlikely. So yeah, it is vastly more likely that cosmic rays will cause the memory in your computer to change in bad ways than that something like that would happen. But okay, in that, you know, in theory, it could happen and 2 accounts would have the same key, and we would treat it just like we treat it when it happens on purpose, because it happens on purpose all the time. If it happened accidentally, we would treat it the same way.
All right. Okay, Mance, next one is for you. Why are the last meeting minutes from February 26th? And are there council meetings happening now, you know, in person or online virtually?
Yeah. So let me take just a moment to explain the council meeting, the release of the council meeting minutes process. When we have a council meeting, of course, we take the minutes. And then in the next council meeting, those minutes get approved by the council. And then within 30 days of approval, those meetings get posted to the website. And so what we're seeing from February are the minutes that got approved in the most recent council meeting and then subsequently posted to the website. So when we have the next meeting, then the most recent meeting minutes will be approved and then posted to the website within 30 days of that. So it's just the lag, and that's all. I mean, the fact that we only have council meeting minutes from February, you should not conclude from that fact that we haven't been having council meetings. We have. So we did make a change. The change is that we're not meeting face-to-face in the same way that we had been on a quarterly basis. We're now meeting online, like everyone is. And we've reduced the time from a day or a day and a half to a couple hours, but also increased the frequency. So now instead of meeting quarterly, we're meeting every 2 months, and we're only online with each other for a couple of hours during that meeting. So those are the changes that we've made while we sort of live in this COVID world. But that's the process, and that explains why you haven't seen any meeting minutes since February, but others will be coming.
All right, thanks, Mance. Okay, Leemon, this month seems to be the month of very detailed technical questions. So here we go again. What stops Treasury from reallocating proxy staked HBARs from council nodes to other nodes at any time, potentially breaking decentralization in the process? In other words, how do we know the platform is truly decentralized if anyone responsible within Treasury could suddenly reallocate stake to whatever nodes they see fit? What stops them from doing this? What are the security measures in place so this cannot happen? And what is the process for allocation to a council node and then reallocation to another node or a new council member?
Oh, I love it. I love this. You guys are thinking about attacks. This is fantastic. Okay, first of all, terminology. We do not have an organization named Treasury. There are no human beings that say, I work for Treasury. It's not like the United States having a Treasury department. When we say Treasury, we're just talking about the accounts, not people, accounts. The Treasury is the accounts that hold the HBARs that sort of belong to Hedera itself as an organization. So when we say Treasury, that's what we're talking about. Then the question is, okay, who can change that? Is there some random guy that's allowed to take all the money out of Treasury and do anything he wants with it? No, that would be really bad. To take things out of Treasury, it's like any other account. It has keys on it. It has to be signed by a certain fraction of those keys. And so the idea is that all of the really critical things, moving things out of Treasury, like you said, or changing staking of Treasury, which is the same thing, or it would be equally affecting our security. But anything we do with Treasury accounts, or anything we do like automatic upgrading of the software, we don't have that yet, but when we do, it will come from a transaction that's been digitally signed. Or if you want to change, well, there's lots of things you can change in the system that affect security. And to make any of those things happen, you have to digitally sign the transaction with a bunch of signatures of a fraction, and the council ends up having control of all these things. So we have everything automated, and when we allow transactions to be doing all these things, software updates and moving things out of Treasury and changing proxying and so on, it is a threshold signature where you need a bunch of council members to all sign it. And when I say a council member, that also is not a human being. It is a whole company, and a typical company can have multiple people within it that have to have a majority of them or some fraction of them signing. And so the only way you can do one of these dangerous operations is by submitting a transaction signed by a whole bunch of council members. And the only way a council member signs is if it's by a bunch of employees of that council member. And if all of that happens, then the dangerous operation happens. So from the very beginning, it's been a very high priority to make sure that we are protecting things like what you just described, because it's critically important. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And also that when we say treasury, we're not talking about a committee or a department or an organization. That's just what we call the accounts. The treasury is the accounts holding the HBARs. It's not a person. And so we always worry about a rogue actor. And great question.
Thanks, Leemon. I think that helps a lot of people understand that. Okay, Mance, this is a question I love. Who do you think is your biggest competitor?
Yeah. So, we've thought about it in preparation here, obviously. And I think the true answer is status quo, right? Centralization, in other words. So the market as a whole still does not understand the value prop of decentralization. It's important for us all to remember that the crypto market is an echo chamber created by a relatively small community of market participants. The larger market doesn't yet understand the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain, let alone the value prop of decentralized trust, and how using it in their existing products and services can provide them a differentiating advantage over their competitors, right? They don't get it yet. Overcoming that status quo is the objective, not just for us, but for the entire DLT community. We are working to overcome the status quo. So that's what I would say, legitimately. The status quo is our common competitor. And we have to grow up as an industry before we worry about other things.
All right. So Leemon, you've talked about the sun's rays smashing computers. What happens if there is a hash collision in the messages, and would that create a fork?
Ooh, great question. So a hash is when you take some message and you crunch it down to just a few bytes, and hopefully it's really hard to find two messages that crunch down to the same string of bytes. We know they exist, but we think it's really hard. That's the purpose of a cryptographic hash, is to be really hard to find a collision. If you ever find a collision, even one, on SHA-2, the entire world will stop using SHA-2 algorithm. They'll just abandon that algorithm if any human ever finds even a single collision. In fact, if any people even find math that suggests that maybe someday we'll be able to find a collision, people would immediately start abandoning SHA-2 and move to SHA-3. It is that big of a deal in the cryptographic community, is that we want to be absolutely sure that nobody can find a collision on any of our hashes. And there's old hashes, MD5, SHA-1, SHA, and there was a SHA before SHA-1, and they were abandoned because they had this flaw. You could find collisions. So a collision is a really bad thing in the world. You're not going to find one by accident. That at least we're sure of. All the computers on Earth could be creating hashes as fast as they can for all eternity, and the sun will burn out before they find a collision. I mean, we know this. Okay, this is easy. The question is there a secret flaw in the algorithm? And it's exactly the same kind of question. Is there a secret flaw in the signature algorithm that would let you forge signatures? Or in an encryption algorithm that would allow you to read encrypted messages? And that's the whole point of cryptography, is to try to not have that happen. The good news is that a lot of people have spent a lot of time looking for bugs in our current hash algorithms and signature algorithms and encryption algorithms. I mean, the world as a whole has spent a long time, and SHA-2 is well trusted. And we go beyond that. So when I say SHA-2, that's the name of an algorithm, but it comes in different sizes. And everybody says 256 bits is enough. It's a very common size used in other ledgers. It's a common size used throughout the world. And the world's cryptographers believe that 256 bits is plenty. However, we go beyond that. And in fact, there is this CNSA standard that the US government uses to protect its own top secret information. And they require you to go beyond that. Don't use 256 bits, use 384. We actually do that. We use 384 on our hashes that we sign. Like I talked earlier about the Merkle tree. We always sign the hash of the Merkle tree. Guess what? Our Merkle tree is 384-bit hashes. This is that higher standard that you would use if you wanted to protect top secret information. You'd have to use that higher standard. CNSA standard. We use that. We use more bits. That's 128 more bits. That's not just 10 times stronger, like it would take 10 times as much work to break it, or 100 times as much work to break it, or 1,000 times as much work. It would be one with dozens of zeros after it. That much more work to break it. It's much, much harder. Also, maybe coincidentally, we don't have any quantum computers right now, but the world cryptographers believe that if you could make a gigantic quantum computer and then go beyond that and make it really gigantic in a really big sense, that there's a sense in which you could break 256 bits, but you couldn't break 384. Now, even breaking 256 is really a long shot. It's really hard, but maybe you could. And but if you go to 384, it's believed to be secure. And so we've actually made our hash so hard to find a collision on that the world's cryptographers believe that we're using the standard for that's post-quantum, that can survive quantum computers. And in fact, there's speculation that that's why top secret information has to use 384 instead of 256, because they're worried about quantum computers someday corrupting old things or attacking old things. So that's a long answer to a short question. Yeah, if anyone finds collisions, then the whole world collapses. But probably isn't going to happen. And we're doing everything we can, and we're actually going far beyond what other people do to try to avoid that.
Thanks, Leemon. That is great to hear. Okay, Mance, a few months ago, Hedera was anointed as a WEF, World Economic Forum Global Innovator. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that was actually unexpected, totally unexpected. And to my knowledge, the designation of being a global innovator, it's not an award that results from a competition. Rather, it's a description that members of the WEF staff chose to use when describing us in their white paper. So while we have a membership in the WEF, it's with a different part of the organization. We don't have a relationship, to my knowledge, we don't have a relationship with the group of people that gave us that designation and published the report, the white paper. It appears that they wrote the white paper and named us a global innovator. And they did so because of what they had discovered through their research. And we were not involved. So we're honored that they view us in this way, obviously, but there is nothing that we did or pursued. In fact, it was a surprise to us. Like, I don't remember how we learned about it, but I think it came from the community that we had this designation on the WF website. And now you all know as much as I do about that particular white paper and the designation of being a global innovator.
All right, and always nice to be recognized.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mance, one more. Will there be any kind of airdrop of DApp tokens for HBAR holders like I think this is the OMG airdrop for Ethereum holders?
Yeah. So as a general statement, the SEC has made it clear that airdrops are not considered appropriate. So Hedera won't make any airdrops of HBAR. Other projects that build on top of Hedera that have their own tokens will have to make their own determination about how they distribute their tokens. But as an organization, Hedera won't do anything that's counter to the regulatory guidance as we understand it.
All right. And you're on a roll, Mance, so we're going with one more for you here.
Okay.
What prevents other companies that are US-based from using the same Hashgraph model as Hedera and taking our successes?
Right. Well, so there are two parts to the answer of that question. First off, when we use the word model in the question, if we're talking about the tech, Hashgraph, they can't. The Hashgraph technology is protected IP, licensed exclusively to Hedera for the creation of this open public network that is the Hedera network. There won't be another one of those. Separate from that, though, is the model of governance that we've adopted and we use. And of course, people could pursue that same type of governance model. I expect they probably will. And And we saw some of this, right? This is Libra is an example of a similar type of model that that came after Hedera. So the answer to that is I wouldn't discount how hard it is to pull together a world-class governing council the way that we have. Now that we've been through it, we know how much work it takes. And so, yes, it is really hard. It's an enormous effort, a big lift. That's not to say others couldn't do it. It's just not simple. It's not easy. And so the two combined, Hashgraph with governing council, make a very compelling proposition. And I think it will be hard. It may be impossible for others to replicate certainly parts of it.
All right. Okay, Leemon, what do you think about token transfer solutions like wrapped HBARs?
Oh yeah, so that's great. And it's one of many possible solutions, and we need to be pursuing all of them in parallel. The world needs to move to ledgers changing society as a whole, changing the entire world economy. And part of that is we've got to be able to talk to each other. So wrapped HBARs, that's a great way to do it. Also, a different approach is atomic swaps between smart contracts on different ledgers. That's a great way to do it. And we've supported that from the beginning. In fact, wrapped HBARs, I think, exist in some places, and they'll exist more as they go on. Another one is you can do things with an AppNet maintaining knowledge about HBARs, and there's things you can do there. There are things like interledger communication that we can talk about in the future when everybody has state proofs. I certainly hope all the other ledgers will someday get state proofs, because that's really what you are needing. So we can talk about that sort of thing. There's even things aside from ledgers that people talk about where you wrap an HBAR inside of a legal contract that you didn't have traditional shares in. There's just lots of ways to slice and dice this problem, how to move things around between ledgers and between people. And obviously we should be doing all of them at once. And ultimately, the most efficient, the fastest ones will be what ends up happening, which will probably be things like interledger communication with state proofs, proving that your communication is right, although you still have some interesting issues about making sure you didn't miss any messages. But for a lot of cases, that's going to be pretty easy. Yeah, we're just going to see everything play out. And you mentioned wrapped HBARs. That's absolutely part of the puzzle, no question.
Great. And we're hearing lots of great things from the community in terms of solutions to some of these problems. Okay, I'm going to take the next one. We all know Hedera is #1 in technology and governance. Yes, that's not the question. Why is Hedera not putting more resources into PR and marketing to the generalized crypto crowd in advance of major network app deployments, given it would not require huge resources to compete with the likes of Cardano that has nothing but just jumped to #5? I don't know what day that was put on there, but it says today. Hedera, as Leemon has mentioned, our goal is to be the trust layer of the internet. And so as such, our marketing will always reflect all substance and no hype. I do think it's important to share with this community that everything that you see out there, everything that we do on the marketing side is earned and not paid. So we don't buy any of these endorsements. We don't pay people to write about us. We don't do any of those things that, as a company, we have seen others do either in this job or in previous jobs. And, sometimes that will have a short-term effect, but does not have a long-term meaningful impact on the value of the company, people's understanding of what we really do, and how much we are able to communicate the benefits and of being that trust layer of the internet. We also have a governing council that we report to that expects us to set high standards and achieve those high standards across marketing and across every other area. So it's important that we market and we communicate to the community at a level that they will all be proud of and be pleased to be associated with as well. All right. And Leemon, now we finally get to the part about Bali. So some of the community members are planning a getaway to Bali when a certain target is hit on HBAR. And I'm also going to say, I'm assuming this is post-COVID. Maybe you've seen some of the chatter. So question, have you ever been whitewater rafting in Bali? And if not, or even if you have, would you join the community?
Wow, whitewater rafting in Bali? I'm in. That sounds fun. It would be fun to hang out with other people in the Hedera community, and that just sounds like fun to me. So if we can do this, if it's post-COVID and all that nonsense, let's celebrate our newfound freedom from COVID by whitewatering rafting in Bali. It sounds like fun. So if I can do it, I'll be there. That sounds great.
Awesome. And I know we have some great hosts and hostesses in the community from there. So we look forward to seeing your smiling faces at some point soon. This question, I don't think we have ever answered. What was the answer to the puzzle that Mance posed during the open access event, Leemon?
I think this is the balance of account 001. So a lot of people notice that it's a little over 6, it's about 2 pi. Yes, you're correct, it is 2 pi. But as they say in school, don't forget the units. The balance was not 2 pi. Yeah, got that. Okay, so everybody said the balance was 2 pi. That is not right. The balance was 2 pi HBAR. So let's talk about physics. Physics is fun. We have fundamental constants of nature. 7 of them have been actually used now to define the metric system. So like is a certain way that cesium can make light. You could ask how many times per second does it wiggle? What's the frequency of this particular type of light given off by cesium? And people used to do experiments to measure it. And then they said, no, instead, we're just going to pick a number and say that is the answer by definition. So how long is a second? It's however long it needs to be to make that answer be right. And so they actually defined the second by picking the frequency for that one situation. And then the speed of light is something people used to measure. But there came a time when they said, nope, we're no longer going to make it be a question of what's the speed of light in meters per second. We're just going to pick a number and say that is the speed of light. And I've already defined what a second is. So how far is a meter? A meter is however far it needs to be for light to go one light second in 1 second. And so they picked the speed of light as a number they fixed, which then indirectly defined how long a meter is. How about the kilogram? That's the last one. And just last year, we finally fixed it. We, meaning humanity. I didn't get to participate. But humanity finally got to fix it. It used to be before last year that a kilogram is however much this certain thing, lump of metal in France happens to weigh at the moment. Technically, it's mass. And there's even evidence that mass was growing over time. But it was always 1 kilogram. And every year, the definition of a kilogram changed to match whatever the mass of that lump of metal was. Insane. So instead, they said, we're going to say that Planck's constant, which is a lowercase h, is a certain number. It just is. And now that we've already defined the second and the meter, this indirectly defines the kilogram. A kilogram is whatever mass it takes to make Planck's constant be that exact number. And so nobody will ever again measure the frequency of that kind of light from cesium or the speed of light or Planck's constant because they're now defined to be a number. And we are defining our units in terms of them. So that's how fundamental it is in physics. Now, often in physics, people use a different number. Often in the physics equation, you'll see h over 2 pi. That's really common. You see this h reduced by 2 pi, the reduced Planck's constant is a really common thing. In fact, it turns out that angular momentum of particles is quantized. It's always a multiple of this. It's like 2 times this or 3 times this or 1 times this. It's never 1.5. It's quantized. So it's a pretty fundamental thing in nature is this reduced Planck's constant. And it gets tiring to write that in equations all the time. So instead, we say HBAR equals that. Basically, they're saying, I'm going to write the letter H, but instead of writing the divided by 2 pi, I'm just going to be lazy and write a bar through it instead. I'll reduce it down to just a single thing. And so if HBAR is equal to h over 2 pi and you do some algebra, what do you get? Well, you get h equals 2 pi HBAR. Planck's constant is 2 pi HBAR. The balance of the account wasn't 2 pi. The balance of the account was 2 pi HBAR, which is Planck's constant, which is a fundamental thing of nature and even defines the kilogram. And so we finally got rid of that lump of metal in France because of the 2 pi HBAR. That's the answer.
All right. Well, unfortunately, I don't think anybody in the community solved it, but I love that you gave us all an explanation, Leemon. So thank you. Now we all know.
I do want to say our community is really smart. Lots of people saw that it was 2 pi. Lots of people, it occurred to them that there's a 2 pi divided, h over 2 pi is significant. Planck's constant divided by 2 pi is significant. So people did talk about lots of pieces of this. So we did have a smart community. Just nobody ever said 2 pi HBAR is Planck's constant. But I think people probably thought that too. They just never told me. So I am very impressed with all you people. And it's all good.
All right. As we get to the top of the hour, Mance and Leemon, what is your view on calling Hedera community members? Now, this is a very technical question. Hederans or Hederians? We also have in the running HBARbarians, and we even have an HBAR bandit. Other suggestions, other names that you refer to community employees as?
Yeah, well, look, so I think it's fair to say that Leemon prefers Hederans, but I prefer Hederians. And so here's what I propose. I propose that you, the community, should have a poll, and we will go with that. And, brainstorming here, I think maybe we will create a t-shirt and, use it. Use whatever you come up with on the t-shirt. Just a bit of trivia. This was not planned. Paul Madsen and I used to work together. Of course, Paul is part of the company here. We used to work for another company. And every year we would have a conference in that company. And Paul would come up with the t-shirts. And on the sleeve, it would say, "T-shirts by Paul." And he had these pithy sayings and cool things that would go on the t-shirts. This went on for a decade. So I think we have a poll, we come up with the term, and we put Paul to work, and we create a new series of t-shirts by Paul and make those available.
I love it. And if you guys are not following Paul on Twitter, you definitely should. There are all kinds of Hedera puns and Hashgraph puns and DLT puns that go on his Twitter feed.
Yeah.
And I love the creativity of this community. You guys are heroes, and one of you just suggested Hederos. I like that. And I saw the meme of HBAR man. I thought that was hilarious. It was a Batman. Yeah. Anyway, it was very cool. So you guys are very creative. We should figure out a good name for you. Have a poll. Let's decide what your name is.
Okay, Leemon, we've got one more question for you before we go into a very quick rapid fire series. Your thoughts on the increasing moves towards transhumanism, a la Elon Musk's neural brain interface project? We saved you like a minute to answer this question.
Sure, because we can, of course, talk about all that in 1 minute. So setting aside the transhumanism, because that's different definitions and different things involved, the Neuralink and that kind of thing, computer-human interface through the brain, is fantastic. It's really exciting. There have already been experiments that show that by putting something here, you can give a blind person sight. And someone has actually done this where they can walk through the subway and they have sight. And you put a little bit lower in the brainstem and you can actually go to the auditory cortex and give hearing to someone who's never heard anything. And we're just scratching the surface here. The biggest problem we've had in the past is that arrays of rigid needles go into the brain and they end up having scar tissue and they stop working after a while. There have been experiments with just putting sort of a net on the surface of the brain, which doesn't cause scar tissue, but it has problems with, you can't see as deeply. Elon has this cool system where you have the needles, but they're more like threads and maybe it won't have the scar tissue, I don't know. So I don't know what the right answer is or the best way to do it. I won't volunteer to do it until it's been shown to be safe and that it lasts for a long time, but I would certainly think about doing it then because there's a lot of things you can do. You can give prostheses to people who've lost an arm and it would work really well. There's just amazing things that are possible. So I won't do it till it's safe, but I think in the future, there's a lot of exciting possibilities here.
Yes, I think we want to go on the record in saying that we will not tamper with Leemon's brain at this point.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, rapid fire round for the two of you, last few. And maybe Mance, we'll start with you, but Leemon, the community wants to know, McDonald's or Burger King?
In and Out. In-N-Out Burger. But if I had to choose, it would be Burger King.
Huge fan of In-N-Out, but I'll tell you the Whopper tastes great.
All right. Coke or Pepsi?
Sonic Cherry Limeade.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah. Or
Coke Zero, no question.
Yeah.
iOS or Android?
Yeah. So for me, it's iOS. These are one of these things you get locked in, and you really get locked in for a long time. And it's been iOS going back to maybe iOS 3 or 4, something like that. Long time.
Yep, and I have an iPhone, and I've had it since the second iPhone ever, third iPhone ever, something like that. Long time.
All right. More seriously, vanilla or chocolate?
Yeah. So it would be vanilla, but blended with root beer. A vanilla root beer blended float. Going back to the Sonic reference, Sonic, you gotta try it. Blended root beer float. Yeah.
I love that. Root beer floats are fantastic. But answering the question, vanilla or chocolate? Chocolate.
Right. And I think we all can recognize that Mance will be the chef when we get to Bali. Okay, fries with or without ketchup?
Oh, with ketchup, because all French cuisine requires a sauce. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. Let me be explicit. That's a joke. I know that French fries are not French. They're Frenched fries. But yeah, ketchup.
Ketchup, definitely. Tons of ketchup. The only sad thing is that when you're eating low carb, you can't have the fries or the ketchup. Oh well.
All right, and last one here. If we are talking about dream vacations, beach or mountains?
Yeah, this one is hard. It's both. I love them both. I would not want to have to choose. Yeah.
Definitely mountains. Unless the beach included scuba diving, then I'd put up with the beach in order to do the scuba diving. But I'm not a beach person. I love mountains.
I think when we're all sitting in about 100 degrees and 80% humidity, those sound pretty good right now. Well, I want to thank the community. I know we're at the top of the hour. We appreciate everybody tuning in and sending in your questions in advance. I did want to reiterate, as we continue to do these going forward, please send in your questions ahead of time. We don't get to see all the ones that are in the chat, but we will get to see them if they're submitted ahead of time. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next month, and everybody please stay safe out there.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.